So what we know and what we don't know about the effects of public health and safety posed by the Denver Zoo incinerator. In 2014, the Denver Parks and Recreation Executive Director, Lori Miller at that time, under the provision of the Denver zoning code, which took authority for zoning in Denver's parks from the City Council and gave it to the Parks Department, declared the zoo incinerator a park use. You may remember that in 2009, INC passed a resolution opposing giving the manager of Parks and Recreation, they were called manager at that time, the authority to make zoning decisions within Denver parks. We objected to it, we passed a resolution, we took it to council, and they ignored it. And this was the first, and it may have, there's some possibility this may have even been known at the time. This was the first exercise of that authority by a parks manager, and what she did was to write a letter saying that because the incinerator was going to burn not only zoo poop, but refuse from trees, they were going to take all the park vegetation and also burn that incinerator, that it was therefore a park use. Incineration, in all other cases, is an industrial use. Park use is defined by Parks and Recreation to include a gasification incinerator with working temperatures up to 800 degrees in the Denver Zoo, used to burn sorted zoo operations and visitors' waste, bio-waste from zoo animals, and parks and refuse from tree trimming. Now, the zoo at various times, various permits list this operations and visitor waste, which would include plastics, for example, and paper from concessions, for example. But then they have also said from time to time that they will not be burning this kind of refuse. However, if you look right here on their wastebasket, this is a wastebasket inside the zoo, you will notice that this waste container says trash to energy, and they show what they're going to be using. Yes, Louis?
800 degrees Celsius, not Fahrenheit.
Oh, I'm sorry, Celsius. That's even, what is that Fahrenheit?
1600 about.
1600, oh my God. Okay, I apologize. Trash to energy. So, incidentally, we did invite the zoo to be here to make their presentation, and they declined, saying that they have all the permissions that they need and they do not have to answer questions. City Council signed off and gave the permit. It was based on what we believe to be incomplete information and incomplete data on what is a newly engineered design of a unique gasification incinerator for the zoo. That information was not available to council at the time. So you know, the way this incinerator is described is as a one-of-a-kind, one-in-the-world only, experimental incinerator. What is gasification? Traditional incinerators burn waste directly. Gasification, plasma arc, and pyrolysis utilize a two-stage process of heating waste materials at 1600 degrees in a separate chamber. The heating process produces a synthetic gas, which is not combined in a secondary process. And it is combined with natural gases, incidentally, which has to be purchased. This two-stage process is also referred to as a staged incineration. The combustion of syngas in the second stage creates ultrafine polluting particles that are emitted into the air. Depending on the type of gasification, the resulting contaminated ash, char, or slag will be needed to be landfilled. And that, I don't know if you can see that very well, but that describes the process. They take these, the poop and the pellets and whatever the poop and other waste, and they make it into little pellets, and then they burn that. Gasification is not a new technology. It's actually a waste of energy since recycling and composting the same discarded materials can save 3 to 5 times more energy. The few full-scale gasification incinerators that were operational for any length of time outside the U.S. could not beat projections for energy production that were proven to be environmental and economic disasters. The State of Colorado Health Department and the Denver Environmental Health have given the zoo a certification for operation within the limits of the incinerators to burn waste. Here's something to note. We must remember that it is not illegal to pollute. It is only a level of pollution above which you cannot pollute. So when you're talking about these gases which are listed here, which are cadmium, carbon dioxide, dioxin, hydrogen, lead, mercury, all of these elements can be emitted from an incinerator. Oxygens and nitrogens, particulate matter, and sulfur dioxide. You can do that. Keep in mind, this is going to be over the zoo and the park. So here you have legally acceptable, but still polluting elements flowing onto the children at the zoo, onto the animals, onto the people in the park, and the surrounding neighborhoods. Testing of exhaust from neighborhood engineered zoo gasification is from the engineered zoo gasification incinerator following a prolonged burning of zoo waste, including samples for harmful particles, has not been done. So this is experimental. We are the guinea pigs. I'm not sure what happened there, but the Denver Zoo will be responsible for self-monitoring of the gases from the gasification incinerator. So what this means is that it is self-monitoring. There is no particular machine that's going to be doing this that reports to the environmental health of Denver, the state, or anybody else. We have to depend on them to tell us what is really being emitted. And I took a little liberty with my cartoon there. Currently, there are no gasification or other high-temperature incinerators within a distance of 5 miles, that was omitted, I'm sorry, of the city and county building and the state capitol. Denver City Park, with its Museum of Nature and Science and the zoo, hosts an estimated 3.4 to 3.5 million people per year. That's actually larger than Rocky Mountain National Park, larger attendance. The park is surrounded by many thousands of residents in long-established neighborhoods. The amount of energy required to recycle is often less than it would be to incinerate waste to create energy. And this is a chart that shows that trash incineration has the highest cost, not only fixed costs, but the operational costs of running that. The revenue stream for maintaining and operating this incinerator is unknown. What the costs are, and other experiences around the country have been that it is not economical. Burning waste contributes to climate change. Incinerators emit more carbon dioxide per unit of electricity than coal-fired plants. According to the U.S. EPA, waste-to-energy incinerators and landfills contribute far higher levels of greenhouse gas emissions and overall energy throughout their life cycles than source reduction, reuse, and recycling of the same materials. Incineration also drives a climate-changing cycle of new resources pulled out of the earth, processed in factories, shipped around the world, and then wasted in incinerators and landfills.
There's nothing good about it at all.
What's that?
Nothing good about it at all. It's pretty scary.
Well, biomass incineration is dangerous. A man was injured at a Coast Guard station in 2012, and when the wood pellets exploded, the wood pellet boiler exploded. That's a picture of the plant after it was actually on fire. It was the Tilbury Power Station. Thousands of wood pellets caught on fire. So the fact that this has not been tested There have been explosions at other waste incinerators around the world. Is there an alternative? The alternative is called zero waste. That's what people endorse today. There are organizations which promote zero waste. Zero waste is a goal that is ethical, economical, efficient, and visionary to guide people in changing their lifestyles and practices to emulate sustainable natural cycles where all discarded materials are designed to become resources for others to use. Zero waste is to reduce, reuse, to source, separate, which includes finding compostables. One of the things that's interesting is that they were going to, when you hear the idea that we're going to burn poop to make energy, it sounds great, doesn't it? Poop and energy. Oh shit. All sounds wonderful. But you know what? You can compost that stuff. It's compostable. You don't need it. It's much more efficient. Anyway, this is a little chart that tells you the cycle of zero waste, and Joan Seaman can talk more about it when she's up here on the panel. But that is what is the state of the art today. And then you can reuse, you can recycle, you can repair. There's lots of things you can do with trash. And if there is some minimum amount that goes to landfills, it doesn't make the impact of the ton of ash and tar. I believe that the formula is something like, if you have 10,000 pounds of waste that you burn in one of these incinerators, you still get 2,500 pounds of ash and tar. Okay, so here is what we do know regarding the zoo incinerator. I'll go through them real quickly. It's an industrial operation. The state has deferred to Denver Environmental Health in regard to authority over this. They claim that it's too small to fall under the EPA, that it's just under the size the EPA would regulate. Denver Health gave approval. City Council approved that, but it was conditional on knowing what they were going to burn. All incinerators generate toxic gases, ash, and waste. Tons of toxic materials will be generated every year in the air around the zoo and the city park. Polluting the air and environment is not illegal. We talked about that. Acceptable limits of pollution are cumulative and still have adverse effects on the environment and public health. Incinerator accidents can happen, and there can be explosions. There will not be a continuous emissions monitor on this machine. The incinerator operates at a very high temperature, but it will have to be fired up and shut down from time to time. And when it is, because you can't just operate, I think they're going to operate 6 days a week. And so when it's shutting down and firing up, that's when it produces the most toxic gas. Incinerators are the leading source of extremely toxic dioxins into the global environment. Even paper produces dioxins. The Denver Zoo is a top attraction in Denver. Many thousands of users visit the zoo, with a high percentage of them being school-age children. And don't forget that we have these animals. I think 4,000 animals at the Denver Zoo, and I would imagine endangered species. Some of them are endangered. Is that true?
Yes.
Yes? So, we speak for the animals. They can't speak. No incineration process should take place within a half mile of any population. What we don't know is the safety of the machine. Because it's experimental, we don't know the types of pollutants. It's a secret design. It was patented, but we do not know what it really is. We don't know the details of its operation. This whole process was cloaked in secrecy. What fugitive gases will be released, we don't know. What engineering companies are behind this? We don't know the exact sources of the funding either. We try to follow the money we can. Whether there is a risk assessment study or emergency preparedness plan. We asked that of Somebody asked that last month of Chief Chase. We don't know how the ash and tar generated will be disposed of, and we don't know what toxins they will contain. We don't know what will be released into the Denver sewer system as well. All of those are unknown answers. So what we're asking here is that the 2010 zoning code, what we know this decision was based on is that the 2000 zoning code allowed one person, the parks executive director, to place an industrial use in a city park. Our city council approved the project without having had time to study the facts in a process shrouded with secrecy. The zoo is a fine and loved Denver institution that may be proceeding down a path with unknown and dangerous impacts. And we're asking, does this one-of-a-kind in the world experiment belong in the middle of the zoo, in the middle of the park, our premier city park, and the city? Years from now, people will not remember this challenge, but we must remember the elephants will never forget.
Hi, I'm Rhoda Walsh, and I'm with City Park Friends and Neighbors, and I was inspired by Nancy Francis and that group's push to stop City Loop. And when I saw this incinerator going into the zoo, I thought, just walk away. But then I thought, no, because my son has asthma, my mother died of COPD, and I saw how she suffered and how children suffer when there's air pollution. So at any rate, so I started, and thank you Jake and Larry and Joan and Louis for your participation. I think that it's very important work, and there are a lot of unanswered questions, a lot of questions. That's sort of what we've come to the point of realizing is that we have questions, and those questions need answers.
Hi, I'm Joan Seaman, and I have to say I was inspired by Bridget Walsh. I saw video, and I saw citizens asking a lot of questions. And I think that's the biggest piece is we have lots of questions. I can tell you about other operations, failed operations with similar systems like this, but I also, as the toxics chair for the Sierra Club, we do not support trash burning. And so trash burning because we don't support recyclables. And the zoo is planning on burning recyclables, burning compostables, which I believe is contrary even to the city of Denver's management plan for waste. So there's some contradictions here, but I'd like to close with this for a moment is the fact that there's a zoning issue here. And the zoning issue is something that's most important to me. And a letter was received by a Denver citizen who asked the Air Division about the question of land use and zoning. And the Air Division, which we have documented, said, you have to know this about agencies. When they approve a permit, it is not based on location. So they didn't approve the location in a park, in a zoo, next to residential communities, so I'm going to leave it at that.
And why do they feel like the incinerator is preferable?
That's a really good question. What are we doing with their waste now? At this point, we know that there is some recycling. They are not burning any waste, they're not burning the power, they are not forthright with information about exactly what have you been doing. This question came up earlier. And so that is one of their presentations is they believe that zero waste, which is a goal they're going to reach, is including an incinerator, which means recycling, composting, etc. That is not their vision for reducing waste. So those are questions we really need to have them answer for us.
I do know that in the past, I don't know how many years ago, people were told they used to get fertilizer from the compostable, from composted waste in the zoo, but we don't know that that's happening today. Nancy?
Just as an additional comment to that question, relates, what I'm going to say relates to your question. Zoos across the country reuse, recycle, compost. That is what today's efforts are with waste. And we have explored, Joan's done a terrific job, and Bridget, on what across the country, San Francisco, all these zoos, New York, what did they do?
Larry, I wanted to make a comment about this question, which is that it's a little Orwellian in my view, because the motivation for this is the Toyota elephant exhibit. And if you look at, they had news articles that were published in specific journals about the construction of the elephant exhibit, in which they laid piping all underneath it and along the walkways in the zoo. And the reason they had to do that was so they could bring these elephants here and create an Asian microclimate, because, you know, our climate is not hospitable to those elephants. And they have already gas boilers to, you know, run the water through these pipes. So I think that the motivation for this really kind of works backward from the elephant exhibit. And that's where all of this got started.
Okay. Next question, Kathleen?
Thank you for all this work. I have two questions. Given your emphasis is on the number of serious questions that are unanswered, what process do you envision for getting those questions answered? And secondly, are there natural institutional allies to whom you've reached out, such as, I'm thinking, not only environmental organizations, but National Health, Jewish Health, which everyone knows is an expert in lung disease. This is right in your backyard. And there are other institutions that might endorse. It might be fairly easy to get endorsements to get answers to questions.
We've reached out to other organizations. Unfortunately, National Jewish Hospital has not responded yet to our overture, but we are certainly not giving up because they are the premier respiratory hospital in the country. But we have gotten a lot of support from national organizations and from local environmental organizations. And we are just sort of starting our outreach now, and this is one of our first efforts to begin educating the public about what's going on. But that's a very good thought. I mean, we are reaching out to those organizations.
The other part of your question, Kathleen, is going to be answered through the resolution. And we will be asking you to consider that resolution and actually having that be a position of INC delegates.
The City Council has given their approval to this. So getting City Council to change its mind is unprecedented, but I know it's not going to be easy. We are, therefore, what this resolution calls for is for City Council to conduct hearings, kind of like Congress has hearings, investigatory hearings. City Council actually has subpoena powers. Since the zoo is not answering the questions, we're asking City Council to actually convene a separate meeting where witnesses are put under oath, and we have testimony from experts, from citizens, from the zoo, and then we can vet all of these questions, all of these issues, and have a full exploration. For City Council itself, here's the answers to these questions. And in that way, there may be a possibility. They may, at the end of those areas, there's always a possibility they say there's no problem. On the other hand, they may determine that it needs to be a second look at this. Anything else in the panel? John, follow up.
Did City Council not hold hearings on this the first time?
Who did you want to pass hearings?
City Council had public hearings, and Nancy Francis and I was testified, but as we were told later by council people, the decisions are already made before the public hearings at council. The deals were already cut. And so what we had to say was considered briefly by one or two council people. But if you see the presentation that the zoo gave the council, the information, I mean, there's a whole list of documents on council's website that council could consider. I don't know if they did, but the zoo's presentation was thin at best, and did not address a lot of issues and questions that we as citizens have about this industrial.
They also used IMC. It's worth noting that in 2011, the zoo came to IMC Park, our Parks and Recreation Committee. Made a brief presentation about how they're going to change food to energy. That sounds great. All of us like that idea. I mean, it sounds wonderful. And the park committee kind of took a straw vote, wasn't an official vote or anything, saying, well, maybe we should take this to the delegation and get an endorsement of this. They had second thoughts about it afterwards and decided not to bring a resolution. There was no resolution put forth. But it did appear in the minutes that there was some positive statement in the minutes of the park meeting about this concept. And when the zoo presented their presentation to City Council, they said, when the zoo leadership presented to the Parks and Recreation Committee of the Inter-Neighborhood Cooperation in August, and that group later formally voted to support the project. Now, you know we don't take positions unless the delegation votes. But this is one of the, I think this is probably the only time I've seen anybody use IMC before City Council as an endorsement. Usually they don't pay any attention to what we have to say, but now they use this in their favor. So that's what happened. And there was only a few people who were at that point not as knowledgeable as they are now, right? You guys didn't have all the information you had.
With the timeline, I think Nancy brought this up, 2008 is when the Toyota exhibit took place. This building, waste management building, was approved in 2008. It wasn't constructed until 2012. The citizens weren't given an opportunity. If they were, I can't find anybody that said they went to a hearing. And that would be good for us to, again, we have so many questions. So the timeline, so all of this, and citizens do have a right, but the certificate of designation at this point says that the Zoological Foundation is responsible financially for all of this at this time.
And so there's no contract with the city?
The city approved the land use. The city, as far as liability, et cetera, at least at this point, that's the agreement. But the Denver Zoo and the city have an agreement that the zoo will only educate and provide enjoyment. So how they went ahead and became partners in a project of an industrial use capacity, no one knows how that